Hi, welcome to Module 5, The Power of Observations. I really like this module. Through a series of mini exercises and self-experiments, you really get to learn about yourself. In this module, we're going to cover learning where your observations come from. That's the fascinating part. And then how we're going to make observations as a leader, as a coach. And then finally, how you're going to use these observations in conversations. Before we begin, I'd like you to write down your answers to this one question that I'm going to ask you. I'm going to play a video, and there's really only one question that you'll need to answer. By writing it down, you can really truly see yourself of what's happening in the moment. This is really what's emerging for you at that time as an observation. So there's really not a lot of time for you to prep, think about how you should show up, think about what you should say, or filter what you're going to say. This is what I love about exercises that happen in the moment, in that you can truly, authentically show up. The question is, what can you observe about the child in this video? Are you ready? All right, here we go.
What's coming?
A train!
Are we going to ride the train?
Yeah! Look at how it goes to us! Oh my goodness!
Here it comes.
Here it comes!
Okay, we got to be safe. Stand back.
Whoa!
All right, let's get on the train. Hey, step up.
Daddy, was it go slower?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Take a look at your list, and here's a list of other responses that I've gotten from people in another workshop. What do you notice? Are the words the same or different? Are they adjectives, which is a word that describes a noun or a person? Are they verbs, action words, or something else? Let's take a pause here to really dissect some of these words. You can do the same with the list that you've got. All right, let's dissect this one. The little girl is excited. Write down what evidence suggests that the little girl is excited. What comes to mind? Yep, we can see that she's smiling and that her eyes got very big as the train approached. We can also see that she's flapping her arms very quickly back and forth, as well as hopping on her foot. We can also see that she said, "Oh my gosh," in a high-pitched tone and covered her mouth. Then let me ask this back in a reverse engineering way. How does smiling mean that she's excited? Could smiling also portray something else? Or what else could smiling mean? What about flapping your arms up and down quickly? Does flapping your arms up and down quickly mean that you're excited? What else could flapping arms mean? How do we know that flapping arms equates to being excited? Who can translate flapping arms up and down and smiling to being excited? The person that's flapping their arms up and down and smiling. That's who. They're the only person who can translate exactly what these actions, these observations mean when it comes to understanding who they are. This excited word that we had. We all have our own interpretations of what flapping arms and smiling means. This is actually part of our internal dictionary. But we don't know what their internal dictionary is until we ask. So when I asked, what can you observe about this child in the video? So based on this original list and your own list, how many of these are true observations and not deductions, assumptions, or our own interpretations? The Oxford Dictionary defines an observation as a noun, which is a remark, statement, or comment based on something one has seen, heard, or noticed. So going back to the list and the list that you have, these are the observations based on this definition. She is pointing at the train. She is asking questions about the train. She is looking at the train. These are observations. Everything else are deductions, or deductions of the person giving the observation. Let's take a pause here and really just think about, wow, how am I making observations based on this very simple exercise? And we do this all the time. By default, we don't realize it until we actually slow down and notice, oh, are we genuinely making observations or an interpretation of those observations? Skipping that step of genuine observations actually happens really quickly in our brains. Imagine looking in a mirror. What would you see? Your reflection, absolutely. But what if the mirror was distorted? What if it had dust on it? What if it had fog? What if it had a lens of a different color? What would you see then? Absolutely. You would see a distorted version of yourself. It's not a clean version. It's not a genuine reflection of actually who you are and how you're showing up. This is what this exercise is allowing you to see. What are the lenses that you wear when you make observations? How aware are you of these lenses? And what does it mean to show up without these lenses when you're making observations?
What I've learned about our encounters with strangers is that we're in too much of a hurry, that we seize on whatever available evidence is out there and jump to conclusions, and we are probably not as aware as we should be about how many mistakes we make in that process. Every time you meet someone new, there is a thrill of anticipation. You're presented with a puzzle, which is, who is this person? What do they want? What do they like? What motivates them? It's easy to create the illusion of intimacy and create the illusion that you understand the person that you're talking to. But you should be careful because you probably don't.
This is so important to distinguish as a coach. One of the outcomes of building the coaching muscle is this ability to be a clean mirror to whomever you're talking to. If they can see themselves in observations and not our own deductions, they can begin to learn about themselves in their own way, not ours. So, how do we make observations? I'm going to teach you a clean, simple way to make observations during conversations. It may feel a bit formulaic, it may be a little bit robotic as you start, but this is how we start training this muscle. Slowly. What we're doing is circuit breaking our old habits in small steps. A few principles to remember as you start. Less is more. The less you say in an observation, the cleaner the reflection for the other person. The more words you use, the more the other person has to filter through these words, and an increased risk that we're going to start introducing assumptions, deductions, our own interpretations, our own stories, right? And so the idea is to really just temper that and create as simple observations as possible. Less is more. Keep it simple. Use words that are simple. I always teach my students, you can definitely use words that even kindergartens would understand. We're not going for a PhD or a spelling bee. What we want to be able to do is allow the communication to be simple so that the person can receive it. For example, I can see you smiling is perfect. It's definitely preferred over something more eloquent and like a poem. Oh, your shining smile with bright eyes that just glows like the sun. That's my interpretation of your smile, this glowing sunshine, but not everybody sees it that way. Definitely not everybody sees how I see everyone smile as glowing sunshine. Here are some clean observations from the examples that we used in the last module. So when someone responds to one of my inquiries or questions, I'll start with, wow, thank you for sharing. I hear you want to understand more of this. Or, I hear you want to deliver the project on time. Or, I hear you want work-life balance. This is the simplest way to start. And in a way you could say, well, it just sounds like I'm repeating or parroting it back. Actually, yes, it can be that simple because their statement is that simple. And what we want to give them back is something equally clean. We don't want to be fogging it up or adding colors or sparkles to what they've said. I'll get into a different observation when the other person has a longer response. We'll go through some of the older conversations and do a dissection on how to make those observations further in this module. The format that you want to pay attention to sounds like this. I hear you, verb, subject matter. The most important part is the verb. This will allow them to use that verb as an anchor because right now in the conversation, it's what they want, that verb. What's happening in the now moment is so critical in the conversation. This is because it's happening in real time. It's not happening in the past, in the future. Whatever they're talking about and what they want as that verb is happening now. They feel it. They're experiencing. This is how they're relating to it with you right now in the moment in the conversation. Let's unpack this to understand it better. I hear you want to deliver this project on time. So deliver the project on time is the subject matter. It is also what they want as an end state. Remember we spoke of being clear on what they want? Can they deliver the project on time right now in the conversation with you? No. But the verb that's at play is this want to deliver the project on time, which is why we're going to work with the want more than the deliver as the verb. It's because the want exists right now. There's a want that they want to deliver the project. They can't deliver the project right now with you. But what we want to do then is work with that want to create momentum in delivering the project. So that's why the verb want is important in the conversation right now, especially based on what this client said. I want to deliver the project on time. It is because this want is happening right now. There's momentum behind it. Definitely more momentum than the deliver. The wanting exists right now. And it is this wanting that we want to create urgency for them to act on. And yes, as I said, deliver is also a verb, but there's not a lot of urgency around deliver because deliver could be a string of activities that could be create, request, push, do, right? There's a whole bunch of little verbs that exist in deliver, but want right now, if we're going to inject energy into any of these verbs, would be within the want. And with the want, they can create something that can help feed and drive the rest of the deliver forward. The difference here between using the two verbs is very subtle, and this will take practice to observe and strengthen that muscle in which verb to pick and use. However, at the very end, both verbs still work. The whole point is you want to drive what's possible with what they want forward. Let's do a few examples of a script that you're familiar with in this new skill of making observations. What I'm going to do here is actually present a few variants of observations. There's no right or wrong in how to make an observation. It's really up to you as a leader and your experience and what you know of the other person in what you want to present as the observation. I'm going to show you a few variants in the responses so that you just have an idea of the playground that you can work with when it comes to making observations. I am going to really pay a lot of focus on the structure. I hear you, verb, subject matter. All right, ready? In this dissection, what we're going to do is really learn to make observations based on someone else's response. We want to be a clean mirror for the other person. So a good structure to consider using is I hear, verb, and subject matter. And I'm going to show some differences on how this can show up. When you use this type of structure, what you're allowing the other person to do is relate their experience. They're telling you about their experience, or you're mirroring to them their experience. And we will only work on the teammates' replies at this time and not the leaders. All right, let's go. All right, so here the teammate says, thanks. I think it went well. Overall, the feedback has been mostly positive, but there were definitely challenges, especially around timing and coordination. So when you hear this, don't worry about what the leader says here, but what you can do is, all right, come up with what are your examples? When you hear someone say this, what are some variances that you could share as observations? You can say, I hear you think the campaign went well. That's one example. Very straightforward, really just playing back what they're thinking. So the verb is you think, subject matter is campaign went well. What else is on the table? You could also say, I hear you have feedback and challenges. This works as well. Or you could say, I hear you think the campaign is positive with some challenges. So what I want to highlight here is that there's no right or wrong way to make an observation. It's really up to you as the leader, but keep in mind, less is more and keep it simple. And that's really some of the principles that we want to do here. All right, so I'm going to highlight this text in blue just so that we know these are the observations that we're making. Let's move on and try some more. So just based on this example here, what I'm highlighting here is you don't have to play them all back. Pick one. I think based on what the person said, one is sufficient. And then, of course, as part of the coaching conversation, you'll add normally an inquiry or question after this because we want to understand, explore more. But for now, we're only making observations. All right, so the next piece, the teammate says here, is a little bit long, so stay with me. Okay, yes. So definitely there were issues with approval on the creative assets and localizations with the local agencies. They needed to translate the briefs and there wasn't time in the plan to do work for that. So there's some delays waiting for them to come back. The other one is some delay in product shipping to some countries. And you know a little bit about that because we worked on that. But in the end, I was double checking when we discussed products, set up the mailing list, and if the products didn't arrive, so I can give you an update on that, on where we are. All right, there's a lot of details there. And the idea is, what do we want to mirror back that's clean and really summarizes the essence of what this person is saying? Any steps here? Again, try in your notebook or offline on another paper as you wish. But let me give you some examples. And again, there's no right or wrong here. So perhaps you could start with, I hear there were 2 concerns or issues or challenges presented. And again, you don't have to go into the details, right? The point is, I hear there's 2 of these, one being of the approvals and the other one being the product delay. You could also say that straight out. I hear you recognize there were 2 challenges, approvals and products. All right. And that's really just summarizing at a high level. And hey, I heard you overall. Whether you go into the details or not, that's completely up to you. But at this time, it's keeping it clean and keeping it simple. Or you could simply say, I hear, oopsies, hold on. I hear, you worked through 2 challenges in this campaign. All right, so here's an interesting thing to try and test. I'm going to move this down so it's easier to see on one page. Based on these 3 observations that I've made back, where would you say these positions are in terms of gain frames or loss frames? So this one, I hear there were 2 concerns, issues, or challenges presented. That could feel more of a loss frame perspective because concern, issues, or challenges are usually more in the loss position, loss frame. So let's put that there and let's highlight this. So this is where it's going to get super interesting. Let's yellow. How about this one? I hear you recognize there were 2 challenges, approval and products. Also feels like in a loss frame. And again, I, as the person making the observation, have choice in how I want to respond and play those observations. All right, the last one. I hear you worked through 2 challenges in this campaign. Interesting. Is this worked through is something positive at the end coming through, right? So this, I would say, feels a little more like a gain frame, which is interesting. So notice what's happening here. You as a leader, as a coach, you as the person making the observations has the option, capability, ability, possibility to frame the observations based on your own words. And so there's power here, right? What is it that we want to create going forward? If we move into the loss frame, let's say either of these 2 with the person, what's going to happen is it's going to open up these problems and challenges bigger. Yes, if we wanted to get to solution and say, all right, how do we want to fix this? What do we do right? What do we want to do better next time? Definitely. Also, even through here with a gain frame, that could be a little more empowering, right? It's like, wow, you worked through this. What allowed you to work through this? And that's really setting them up for success to move forward as well. And so I just want to put on the table here how you as a leader, as a coach, you have choice. You really have choice in the words that you use and the observations that you choose. All right, so let's move on. This next piece here, the teammate says, I really think part of it was just some partners weren't fully aligned with the timeline early on. We had underestimated the holidays for turnaround with agencies. I definitely underestimated how long approvals would take. All right. What are some thoughts on playing this back to them, making an observation or responding? I hear you. Anything come to mind? Yeah, I hear you have had two challenges. Two challenges being partner alignment and turnaround approvals. That could be one. Or what else? I hear you underestimated. Estimated timing for approvals. That's definitely something you can play back. I hear you didn't fully align with the partners. I hear you recognize opportunities to improve going forward, potentially. That could also be somewhat of a deduction / assumptions. But again, your call on what you want. So all these are options, these 1, 2, 3, 4 right here as observations. Again, there's no right or wrong. However, pick one or two that you feel would be representative of what they're trying to say, and how you want to move the conversation forward. Again, this really depends on your objective as their leader on where you want to drive this. But this is just illustrative. And again, it takes practice, right? It's not easy to say, oh, here I have the observation. Play back what comes to mind. You really have to practice. All right, let's do one more as a test or as a practice. Oh, well, definitely. I'd probably map out a more detailed timeline up front. This will help set clear expectations with stakeholders. And I definitely need to build in some extra time for waiting and getting those approvals. All right, what could we say as observations? Oh, I hear you've found ways forward. That's a great summary, right? We don't need to go into the details. They know what they found. This is great. You could say, I hear you could map more details and buffer time. Or you could say, I hear you could set clearer expectations. There's so many here, right? There's just like, because the client is really, there's a lot of verbs on the table. There's a lot of things that they have proposed, and which is fantastic. So again, any of these work, or I hear you have thought this through on addressing the challenges. And again, you don't need to go into details. As their leader or manager, let them manage their empowerment. Right. And so that's my suggestion, just being in roles like this before. And so this first one and the last one are just great summaries around, oh, you've got this. And it's basically summarizing, you found ways forward, carry on. Again, there's no right or wrong here. This is your choice, but it goes to show how varied, and there might be more observations beyond this because this is just my lens, right? But you as a leader, you might have your own lenses as well. And there we go. So this is illustrative of how we practice making observations as a muscle. And this is important. Just pay attention to what you're observing and hearing when you're speaking to people. Great. Well done. That was not easy, but hope it gives you a flavor of how to make observations and the variants that you can put on the table for you to try. All right. Before we close, let's try something. I want you to cross your arms. naturally. However it lands, just do that. Now, cross your arms the other way, like thread it the other way. Had to think about it, eh? This is because our muscles act in a default way, unconscious to us. This is very similar to the lens we wear and how we respond automatically or make observations automatically. To start building a new muscle so that you're ambidextrous, as in you can use both your left hand and right hand, you really have to consciously train yourself to think differently, to show up differently, to really pause and circuit break the habits that we have as the old muscle. So we're not to say we're getting rid of old muscles, but we're training new muscles so that you have a choice in how you want to show up as a leader. Welcome to the world of coaching. Well done. In the next module, we're going to explore the power of questions. This is the partner of the power of observations because it takes both of these, the observation and the questions, that allow to create a powerful coaching moment. In the meantime, I have a whole suite of practice observations that you can make, and we can do them together in the use case library. And as usual, if you have any questions, drop it in the community or in any of my drop-in sessions and we can chat. And I would love to see and help you through your use cases. The best thing to do is really have it transcribed or recorded, and we can work on little snippets as you're going through these practices. See you in the next module.